Hi, it's Sarah here from Your True Shelf, and today I'm doing a video about a book which I've just finished reading, which is this book here. This is called It's All in Your Head, True Stories of Imaginary Illnesses by Suzanne O'Sullivan. And she is a consultant neurologist who wrote the book, and she won the Wellcome Prize in 2016, which is a prize for books which feature medicine or health as a theme, whether fictional or non-fictional. And I heard her speaking around about the time when she must have been shortlisted for the book, and she really captured me as an audience listening to her, because she'd written this book about functional illnesses, and this is something which as a doctor I see a lot of the time, and both myself and probably a lot of my colleagues can feel very ill-equipped to deal with. So if I just start by explaining what functional illnesses are in case people aren't aware, they're basically illnesses for which we have no medical explanation. So it might be somebody who's got chronic pain, which we can't explain, somebody who's having seizures which aren't due to epilepsy and we can't find a cause for, somebody who's lost their vision despite the fact that all of their imaging and tests are normal, or somebody who has something like itching all the time and we can't find out why they're itchy. So it could be a whole variety of symptoms, and we tend to find that every part of the body can have symptoms which we can't explain. And this book is written about people who have really serious and debilitating illnesses that we don't know why they're there. So that's the premise of the book. What did I think about the book? Well, the first thing is I really didn't like the title, and I think that the whole message of the book is about how people who suffer with medically unexplained symptoms can be severely disabled. Their whole lives can be disrupted by the symptoms, and a lot of people's perception is that their illness is less serious or even not real because we can't find a medical explanation. And the whole purpose of the book, in my opinion, was to try and break that pattern of thought. So to try and explain to people that yes, we might not be able to find on our tests what's wrong, but this person is still very disabled by their illness and it still causes them a great deal of suffering, and their symptoms are as real as somebody who we can find an abnormal scan, for instance, and a medical explanation. So then to come up with that title, I don't know whether it was her that came up with the title or whether it was her publisher or what, but I just feel that the title completely contradicts the message of the book, especially the fact that it's subtitled True Stories of Imaginary Illnesses, because I think the word imaginary undermines that message personally. But the actual stories in the book were really fascinating. So it's divided into several people's stories, and it focuses on the time from when Suzanne first meets the patient and tells a bit about the history of their illness and about how much it's affecting them. And then the point where she meets them is where it's often suspected that it may be a functional illness, so medically unexplained. And when she tells patients that she thinks they have a medically unexplained illness, they often react badly. So some people in the book do take on board what she says, and they tend to then go on and look into psychological treatment to try and help them unpick and get better from the illness. A lot of people react in an angry way because they think that she's saying, well, you're making this up, when that's not what she's saying at all. It's just how they interpret what she's saying. So it follows the stories, and it's also interspersed with other stories about other patients, but just focusing on them in less detail. And the stories are really fascinating. I think that she has a really difficult job to do, and I think that she sounds like she does an amazing job at what she does. She will stand up to other doctors. She will tell people to stop intervening in certain ways. So for instance, in her patients who have seizures which are not due to a known cause, she will tell doctors to stop injecting them with drugs, to stop taking them to intensive care because their treatments aren't going to help. All that the person needs in that scenario is somebody to be with them and to reassure them and wait for them to come out of the seizure. And so she's quite gutsy and feisty, and I liked her in the book. In terms of what I gained from reading it, I gained quite a lot of knowledge about how disabling the functional symptoms can be for people, and how some of them have been through terrible experiences. Like, one lady was having a seizure and some people started crowding around her and filming it on their mobile phone. Somebody asked her if she was okay and then took her mobile phone and ran away. Just really awful things that you just wouldn't think people would be terrible enough to do. And also the suffering that people go through when they get the diagnosis of a functional illness, and how people who were sympathetic to them before can withdraw their sympathy because they see it as, oh, well, they're just making up, or they just need to pull themselves together. And I think it's perceived in the medical community sometimes in that way as well. So it was really informative for me to learn about the impact of having a functional illness on a person, their relationships and their lives, their work, everything. She also has access in the book to a psychiatrist. So for people who are wanting to explore why this illness might be there for them as a result of some kind of psychological trauma, she has a psychiatrist that she can refer them to, and that's not often the case in the NHS, which is a real shame. Personally, I don't think it has to be a psychiatrist. I think it needs to be somebody who can try and unpick what's at the root of the problem for the person. So just to explain that a little bit more, it's thought that, I like this way of explaining it, which is how she explains it towards the end. So when somebody has a functional illness, it's their body's way of expressing that something is wrong on a deeper level, and it's the body's way of saying, look, we need to get some help. This is how I'm going to attract your attention to the problem. And I quite like that explanation, because for me, if we can prove that there's no physical problem, then the symptoms are a manifestation of some other kind of pain, internal pain, mental pain, trauma, previous experiences, something that's going on a deeper level that people often aren't aware of. So often we'll say to people, or I'll say to people, what's going on in your life? What's causing you to have this distress? And they say, nothing, I'm fine, I'm not stressed, don't know, nothing bad's happened to me, but something must be going on at a deeper level, because otherwise they wouldn't be unwell in this way. So she has the power to have a psychiatrist working in her, not indirectly in her team, but working with her in the way that she can refer people. And often we don't have much in the way of psychological support in the NHS, so that's quite an interesting area where I guess a lot of people would end up coming back to their GP quite regularly because they're not getting help necessarily from elsewhere. And that can be quite tricky to manage when people have had lots of tests and they have expectations of having more tests and somebody coming up with an answer and somebody prescribing something. It can be a real challenge to move forwards in this situation. So I think she does a really good job of explaining that in the book. And the other thing which was really interesting is that she goes through medical history quite a lot. So she starts back to when this problem used to be called hysteria, and it was the word hysteria is derived from the word hyst for uterus, and it was thought that the uterus would run around to different parts of the body causing symptoms. So if somebody had unexplained headaches, it was because the uterus had gone and taken over or gone and caused trouble in their brain. Or if they had I don't know, if they had a sensation of a lump in their throat, then it was because the uterus was sitting there causing a problem. So that was really fascinating and bizarre. And then it talks about Freud and other people in that area who thought about this first of all being as a an organic illness with a proven physical cause, and then it talks about how it was thought then to be a psychological problem, and it goes through lots of different aspects of medical history and how there was an awful period of time where people would get locked up and put into asylums and brought out from asylums for demonstrations in public, and lots of horrendous things. But it was just really interesting to read about the medical history alongside the patient's stories. And the way she finishes the book is by talking about laughter, and she says that laughter is a psychosomatic thing. It's something where something comes into our head, it makes us laugh, it makes responses in our bodies, it can make us shake, it can make us cry, it can make us fall over, it can make us bend double, it can make us hurt if we laugh really hard, it can make us ache, and that's just because something funny came into our head. And she says that laughter is the ultimate psychosomatic symptom because it's showing the link, like blushing or like crying. It's just showing on a really simple level how everybody in the world day to day has psychosomatic symptoms. In other words, they start from the mind, they come into the body, and we all have them. And she says, why do we have such trouble accepting this and accepting using hypnosis? Why do we have so much trouble when we can accept hypnosis for pain relief, or we can accept that our heart beats faster when we think certain thoughts and we get nervous, or we think certain thoughts when we cry? So that's all fine, but we can't accept certain things are going on emotionally, psychologically, on a deeper level for us, and they bring out other negative physical symptoms. Why do we have so much trouble with accepting that? So it was a really interesting read, and I would recommend it. I think you would be fine reading it if you have no medical knowledge, because she explains all the terminology that she uses. So I think anyone would find it interesting. I think if you suffer from a functional illness or any medically unexplained symptoms, I think you'd find this an interesting read as well. And I would look forward to hearing any comments either on my opinions or on the book if you've read it. And I will check in again on another topic of this kind later in a few days' time. Thanks, bye.